Stop moving a pop shield around.
I know. I've got a droopy pop. I've got a droopy pop shield.
I don't think
Hang
it's going to
on.
matter. I don't think it's
There
going to
we
matter.
are. It's not drooping anymore.
That's good.
It's fully erect.
Okay, I'm not going to use that in the show. Hello and welcome to I Know That Voice, the podcast about voice actors and voice acting. I'm Keith Wickham. I'm a voice actor, have been for 30 years. You'll know me best probably as Sir Topham Hatt from Thomas and Friends, as well as Gordon, Henry, Edward and various other engines in the show.
Can you get on with it, Keith?
I'm also Professor Inkling and Shellington in the Octonauts, and I was a koala brother. I was Cornel and Watch My Chops. I was in 64 Zoo Lane. I was also Change Daily in The Secret Show.
Show isn't about you.
I thought it'd be nice to talk to my fellow voice artists about their profession. These are people whose voices you will know, but who could still go to the supermarket without being mobbed. Today's guest is known to millions of children and adults alike as Moody Margaret from Horrid Henry, as well as Florence in the Magic Roundabout. She's also appeared with Tracey, Ullman and Catherine Tate on television. But she's a veteran of thousands of promos and commercials and hundreds of animations. It's the lovely and fantastic Sue Elliott-Nicholls.
I think we've got enough there.
Today I'm talking to Sue Elliott-Nicholls, and she was the voice of Florence in the Magic Roundabout, among many others. And you were in Horrid Henry. What were you in Horrid Henry?
Oh, I was Moody Margaret. I was the seriously annoying voice.
Oh,
That
really?
one. That one that parents hate.
Yeah. And the one that I also voiced the promos for Nickelodeon.
Oh, yes.
And when it was on Nickelodeon, obviously they have to watch endless episodes. And they were like, oh no, that
Did it
voice
drive them
is
mad?
so grating. So grating. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, well, we'll go on to grating voices later. What we're going to do now is start at the beginning, because I always like to find out more about the guest as to where you started and where you're from.
I grew up in the burbs of London,
Okay.
so I've got that's where I get the estuary drawl.
Yes.
And I started out actually at BBC Wales.
How did that happen? That seems like a very odd jump.
Very odd, considering I'm not Welsh. So basically, it was the days that you needed to have an equity card in order to work. This is such a ridiculously fairy tale story.
Yeah.
I was doing street theatre in Covent Garden. Some friends of mine came with another friend who was looking for a female presenter to work at BBC Wales.
Okay.
We were just about to finish the street theatre because the summer was nearly over, and he said, and his name's David Pete, lovely. He's gone on to produce Gavin and Stacey and be amazing. And he said, here's my number, give me a ring. And I thought, it's obviously a lot of old nonsense, but I'll ring it anyway. Rang the number. I mean, I was literally like 18. Hello, BBC Wales. And I thought, oh my God, are you really like offering me a job? And it was kind of the best thing that could ever have happened, because I went to work there. I got to write my own sketches. I got to do loads of different voices. I was working with amazing people. There was Rob Brydon, there was Ruth Jones, there was all these brilliant, all of us starting out actors. And the great thing that David did the very first time I went there was he said, hire a studio for an hour and just play around with the mic.
Wow.
Stand on a table, whisper, go to one side, go to the other side, just get to know a mic. And I was like, that's just a bit of a weird thing, 18-year-old. And in those days, I was much more common than I am now, Keith.
Oh,
I've slightly
really?
reinvented myself.
I can't believe that.
I know, can you, more common. So I spent like an hour doing that, and it was brilliant. And then I just kind of carried on doing voices from there, left Wales. Then I was part of Hobson's Actors, and then they were
yes.
why aren't you in our voiceovers? And so on we went from there, really. Oh,
Did
dear.
you...
My pop shield's drooped again.
Oh, dear.
I think I'm going to leave it there.
It's a very hot day. You
it's
can't
the
blame
heat.
it. Yes. So did you train before that?
No, I didn't. I when everybody else was at drama school, I was at BBC Wales, and I kind of thought, when I leave, I'll apply for drama school. But there kind of seemed no point, because by that time, I was already working. But
Yes.
I feel I had the student experience because I lived with students from Welsh College of Drama. So, except that I was earning money and they weren't. Yeah.
And then from there, what happened? You were with Hobson's, which is a major voice agency.
Yes, from there was with Hobson's. I think on my very first, I did lots and lots of voiceovers, like Tate That Pull Out exclusive and all the kind of like, dead 90s, quite streety type of stuff.
Okay.
And then I did Watership Down was my first animation, which was amazing. It was with like Rick Mayall, Phil Jupitus was one of the people. I mean, it was just brilliant. And then after that, I just carried on doing a million, as we all have, different animations. And it's just the most fun, isn't it? It's the most fun.
So it was a very sort of easy... You didn't have to work at it? You never...
No, I mean, honestly, I feel like so blessed. I did lots and lots of radio comedy back in the day when it was kind of Paul Schlesinger was in charge and then Jane Bird too. And so I was just immediately, and I think once you're part of that world... work just kind of goes around and around and around, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Which, I mean, think myself so lucky all the time.
Yes.
The last thing in the world I would have imagined myself doing was voiceovers, because I just think I always thought voiceovers sounded like that.
Yes, of course. Yes.
With chocolatey voices and very, very deep. And when I used to do stuff on Radio 4, I used to kind of hear this background, which was and that bit was me, the middle bit. It's sort of a bit of a shrill, bit common. It's the last thing that I imagine myself doing, really.
So when you were a kid, what was your ambition? Did you want to be an actress?
I always wanted to be an actress. I don't think I ever imagined myself doing anything else.
So you were aiming for performing in some way or another? Right.
Yeah.
So this wasn't a total.
I can't imagine
it wasn't a
I'd be
total
any
out
good.
of the blue thing. It was.
No.
Right.
I absolutely always wanted to be an actress, but I sort of imagined voice actors would have.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yes.
The voiceover actor's voice.
Right, because I never thought that. I was always on the Peter Sellers Goon Show thing. I always did the characters. I have done presenting a bit. On Radio 4, a little bit. I did a couple of documentaries. But you've done quite a bit, haven't you? Was that an accidental thing again?
No, you know what? It was when I left BBC Wales and I kind of soul-searched. I mean, I was literally 20 thinking, I don't know now. I don't know whether I want to do presenting or voiceovers or acting. I mean, really, now they call it a portfolio career.
Yes.
Now it's kind of dead cool. But in those days, it was more like jack of all trade, master of none, really.
Yes.
So I decided that's what I was going to be.
Okay.
Janet of all trade. So I thought, I can carry on making programmes for Radio 4 and I can carry on doing voiceovers and I can carry on acting. And actually, the three of them have fed into each other quite well. And now that's much more normal. In those days, I used to feel I had to kind of really keep them separate and not mention to the, if I saw someone in the BBC canteen when I was doing a radio comedy and they were, say, from Woman's Hour, I'd kind of think, oh, no, this is a bit awkward now. I tried to sort of separate them up, but now I don't anymore. I mean,
I don't think it matters, does it?
I think it's a good thing, yeah.
I don't think it matters at all.
No, absolutely not. I feel like it's kind of the Wild West out there at the moment,
it is,
isn't it?
Yes.
But I suppose what will naturally happen is I think there's lots of people with lovely voices, but can they be directed? Can they say and in 42 different ways? Can they fit a sentence into 3 seconds, So I feel like the wheat and the chaff will get separated in that respect.
When you were doing animation, I guess the biggest part was Florence.
Was
it the
Horrid
Henry?
Horrid Henry. Horrid Henry is massive. I mean, literally, I will meet kind of 20-somethings all the time. All they want to know about is Horrid Henry. If I do any kind of presenting, any kind of talking, they'll be chatting away and somebody will say, oh, she was Moody Margaret. Oh, that was my childhood. It was a massive show, and I think still is.
Yes.
I mean, there's kids on my street that still watch it. So, it was. I think that was like the hugest. I mean, I feel like for us, Florence in Magic Roundabout is the most iconic because it's Magic Roundabout, isn't it? And I suppose that was our childhood, so that's why we love it so much.
Yes,
that's
true.
You know what? It was quite a difficult part to play because everyone else was having so much fun being kind of, Ermintrude and Dylan.
A character.
And putting their own spin on it. And I just had to be really, really sensible and really kind. And it was actually quite tricky because all I wanted, everyone else was leaping about the studio kind of vocally, doing all these great characters. So I feel like that was the straightest part I've ever had to play. Normally I'm playing the big characters, the monsters and the naughty children. So I feel like that was actually really hard to contain myself, but good for the voice.
Was it at one point constant? I mean, I guess
the animation
was
work.
it a constant thing?
No, I think for me, I've always done 2 or 3 a year. But I think for some people, that they've got 5 or 6 on the go every year.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I feel like I do more kind of promotional voiceovers for children, and obviously in vision acting. So for me, it's around about 3 a year, I'd say.
Okay.
But I know some people have kind of,
Do you? The other thing I was going to ask you was, do you do theatre and other stuff and TV and stuff like that?
I do TV.
As well as...
I do a lot of TV comedy. I just did some serious acting. I know. I was quite nervous about it. I thought, oh my God, am I going to kind of crack up laughing halfway through?
Yeah.
But I actually got really into it. I loved it. Yeah. And even if I did like Call the Midwife, which is not a comedy, but they tend to give me the kind of funnier parts.
The light parts.
Yeah, so and I did the Babs film, again, it was a kind of funnier part. So, and I know when I was doing Call the Midwife, and I said to the director, I don't want to kind of make this too funny. And he said, well, no, that is kind of why we brought you in. So,
right.
So, so mostly comedy, I'd say. I've just done Things You Should Have Done with lovely Chi Keskin, which was so much fun because
was that?
It's Things You Should Have Done. So it's the same director and the same company that did People Just Do Nothing. And, when you watch that, you think, is that improvised? Is it scripted? They really love you to do loads of improvisation, which is my happy place.
Yeah.
The only really hard thing about improvisation is not corpsing. That's really,
Yes.
I mean, that's really hard. I ended up having to do one scene to somebody's eyebrows. I just literally couldn't look in their eyes because their eyes were like dancing with laughter. Looking at me, defying me, come on, laugh. But you see, what I find very tricky is the whole kind of stick to the script. When you're in vision, the continuity side,
Yes.
put that. It's not the lines, it's not the emotion, it's not the acting, it's that technical which way round the label went on the medicine bottle that you put on that shelf when you said this line. I find improvisation much easier. It's much freer.
Do you still do that live? Do you do shows?
No, I'd love to do more live shows. I am considering it, actually. I went to see, do you know Andy Linden? Lovely Andy Linden does a lot of voiceover work. He's doing a one-man show in Edinburgh, and so's Brenda Gill-Hooley. And I thought, wow, that's quite an interesting... Because I used to do loads of theatre, and then I had my first son when I was in my 20s. So I kind of, unless it was a number 1 tour... I kind of couldn't carry on doing theatre. It just wasn't viable financially. So I got out of that world. I think you end up in worlds, don't you, when you're acting?
Yes, you do.
Yes. But I'd love to do more theatre. I missed rehearsal. That's what I love about theatre.
Okay.
I love rehearsal. I love getting to know people, and I love who they are on day 1 of rehearsal and who they become 3 weeks later.
Yeah. Because you love improv. Do you like the repetition of doing the show night after night?
I am okay with that because I think it's really interesting the way shows subtly change as the run goes on. And you become more embedded in the character. And so I am very much okay with that. I mean, I think you kind of have to be as well, especially if you're doing TV, because you've got to keep that momentum up, doing the scene over and over again. So, yeah, I am okay with that. But I think animation is ridiculously fun because, a good animation director will encourage you to be as silly as you possibly can. I mean, where else in acting can someone say, you can't go too far? If you're too much, we can bring it down. But, you know, I
Yes.
mean, that to me is kind of like, I feel like if I was an actor in the old days, I feel like we would all have been carry-on actors. You know, there's an
Yeah.
actress called Emma Tate who is in Horrid.
Oh, yes.
I mean, you know Emma, but she was in Horrid
Yeah.
Henry with me, and we did Magic Roundabout as well. But when we were doing Horrid Henry, we used to be split up. We weren't allowed
'Cause
to
you
go
laughed
next to
too
each other
much.
because we just always laughed too much, you know. And then we ended up sending each other notes. It really did become a classroom. But you see, I was always the one that got in trouble, whereas everybody was messing around. But somehow, you know,
Yeah.
it was like school all over
Yeah.
again. It was kind of...
This is happening less and less, the group
group
recordings.
recordings, I miss the group recordings so much. And I think it's better. I think the results are so much
Yeah.
better.
It is better.
It's much better, and you feed off each other and you bounce off
Yeah.
each other, and you know somebody's delivery then affects your delivery, and
Yes.
the funniest, most classic moments are sort of your reaction to somebody else's delivery, you know,
Yeah.
and also the kind of sheer joy in the. I think voices. Say so much. You know, you can hear a laugh in someone's voice, you can hear a giggle, you can, and often I interview people as well, and sometimes it's those silences that say more than what they're saying, or the way people stutter,
Yeah.
or the way somebody might speed up when they're nervous. I mean, I think we'd have no idea, unless you work in sound like we do, how much somebody's voice and somebody's delivery says. And so if you're working in a studio with other people and you're bouncing off of what they say and their rhythm and their delivery, it's like a million times of a better performance, I think.
And now, talking about group recordings
Mm-hmm.
and naturalism of voices and realism of voices, it brings me on to AI, of course, and all that's happening. And I'm gauging everybody's response to it. What's your take on it?
My response is to firmly put my head in the sand and hope it's all going to be okay. I don't think it is. I mean, I'm actually part of the actors, the voiceover actors committee with the agents and Equity, and we're tackling that at the moment. It's really interesting, and you know, sort of terrifying, really. I think that the time it's taking to try and explain to people the legality of using your voice and the time that you have spent honing. I mean, I don't want to sound, you know, like honing your craft, but it kind of is. You know, you spend years working how to use your voice like an instrument. You know, I saw something online the other day, and it was an advert. So there's a girl and she's browsing in a bookshop, and someone says, "Oh, you're looking at this book?" And she said, "No, I've just taken a photograph of it so that I can put it onto my phone and it'll read it to me for nothing." And I just thought, are you kidding me? You know, then I was reading the comments and there was, well, that writer might have spent a few months writing that. And I was like, a few months? That will have taken absolutely years,
Yes.
plus the pitching, and then we read them, and there's all that kind of care and thought in the delivery. There's all the castings, there's the lives. I mean, there's so much that goes into these things that it slightly terrifies me. I really, really hope that the government are going to take it seriously. I'm very glad that Equity is starting to pick it up. I think the trouble is, you know, people... Well, it'll be when you do voiceovers, it's like the world's smallest violin, isn't it, as far as everybody else is concerned? They just, you know, swan into a studio, the runners are running around, you know, put on silly voices for 2 hours, and there's, you know, your mortgage paid for that week or whatever. But it's the whole lifestyle that goes into it, and what you have to take on board as you're going along. It's the castings, it's the preparation, it's holding your nerve when things are quiet, it's coping when things are busy. There's so much involved that to just be able to lift somebody's voice, I really hope it's taken really seriously. And I hope people take voices seriously because, like I say, I think people think that it's a very easy job. Yes, it's very enjoyable, 2 hours that you spend in that studio, but on the other side of that, there's castings, there's readings. If you're doing an audiobook, there's the preparation for it. There's so much more involved in doing voiceover work than just standing in a studio for 2 hours and putting on the voices.
Do you think people will care enough? Do you think the audience will care enough to make a difference?
I hope so, Keith. I really hope so. I really hope that that people will begin to recognise the nuance of a kind of an actor reading something as opposed to an AI voice reading something.
Yeah.
What worries me is how quickly AI is becoming more and more advanced at kind of breakneck speed.
Extraordinary speed.
I hate the idea of my voice being used.
Yeah, this is the thing, and this is the thing that everyone said, I think, pretty much, is that's the real worry for them.
I hate it, and I know that
suddenly...
this sounds a bit dramatic, but it's almost like you feel a bit violated. It's like, this is my voice, this is my delivery, my voice. Everybody's voice is telling the story of their lives. And we're interviewing a lot of older people for a series at the moment, and the trauma they may have been through, the joys they've been through, where they've lived, a lot of them in the world, is told in their voice. And so for somebody to take that and use it, it's a horrible feeling.
I think the key phrase is without your permission.
Without your permission, absolutely.
Because we do that all the time as a profession. Your voice is used all the time somewhere, but you know it is, and you've been paid for it. Yeah, it is like a burglary. It
is, absolutely is. And it's your individual voice, And it's interesting doing voiceovers and hearing, like I said, when I started, I thought all voiceovers spoke like that. All these like beautiful, nuanced voices that we come across, from all over the world. And their voice comes from their lives, the lives they've lived. And so I think it is. It's like stealing, to take somebody's voice. It's more than just the finance. It's actually somebody's in. I know it sounds dead dramatic, doesn't it? But I do feel a voice is the sound of somebody's life. Getting deep here, Keith.
Yes. Well, it's very good though. You are also doing a podcast.
Yes. Which
is called.
So it's called the Hackney and Newham History Social Club. It's It started 2 years ago. It's actually, you know what? It's quite interesting because it's about people's stories and voices. When I worked at BBC Wales, I met Tony, my husband, who's from Cardiff Docks, and there were all these amazing docker experiences from people from all over the world that had settled in Cardiff Docks in Tiger Bay, and I didn't record them, and I really wish I had. So during lockdown, I did a community radio. I presented a community radio project. And there were all these like older EastEnders. And I thought, where this area is changing so much, let's try and grab their stories. So we got funding. We brought in a very brilliant documentary producer called Tamsin Hughes, who I'd worked with at the BBC, and just made the most beautiful collection of stories of people from East London. So their love story, they're three-beat stories, beginning, middle and an end. Falling in love, losing people, finding pictures, and then the pictures ending up at the Tate Modern. The stories of the travellers and how Princess Anne came and visited them and nobody knew, and what happened after that. So, but again, it's those rich, beautiful voices, and it's the voice that just is so beautiful to listen to. And I feel like I've been really privileged to have been presenting that.
So do you record it as well?
I record some of it. So some of it's recorded by the researcher and the producer, and some of it's recorded by me. So I get to, there's an amazing Londis near me called Londis N16, which is internationally famous. They've got like millions of followers on Instagram. They've been in the Face and all sorts, because they make their own curries and sell them, and they are delicious. So I spent the day with the family making Gujarati curries and hanging out with the women in the back in the kitchen, going to the market with them. So, it's been a real privilege. And then, hosting it as well. But again, it's those voices. It's that experience of life. It's that kind of like a lot, a lot of them are kind of old school East End. A lot of them have come from the West Indies, Bengal, India, all over. And so the stories of their travels and where they've lived and the hardship and the joys is told in their voices, and I suppose that's what I mean about AI. A voice is somebody's life. I think AI has no life experience. No. So that's been very pleasurable. That will be over soon, and I will miss it. But it's been a lovely 2-year project. So yeah.
What's it called?
It's called the Hackney and Newham History Social Club.
Okay.
The reason being that then we think we can call it something else, History Social Club, and carry on.
I see.
Do you see what we did there?
See.
Oh, yes, just always with an eye to the
good.
future. Yes, the other thing that I was thinking about was promos, like coming up next, and it's that sort of fitting it in with the inserts and kind of picking up of the feel of the inserts that's gone before and getting it into the time frame that it needs to be in. That, again, is something that people don't always realise is involved in voice work. I mean, I absolutely cannot imagine that you could do promos with AI because, you get these little clips of like, Peppa Pig or Thomas the Tank Engine and Peppa might be jumping up and down on the bed laughing and you will pick up on that and say, see Peppa, but jumping on the bed.
Yeah.
And not only have you got to kind of pick up on the feel of the clip that's gone before, you've also got to do it in this amount of time, this many seconds before the next clip comes along. So these are the things that are not known about when people are listening to promotional material on TV. They don't know the work that's gone in. They don't know how you've had to work on that to make sure you can fit words into a small amount of time or stretch them out by 3 seconds so they hit the next piece of video. And I think that's why lots of people can have lovely voices. Not everybody can work to time with a producer kind of wanting it done within the hour.
Yeah, or act. Because that's a big thing.
Yeah.
What they're getting and what they're paid for, I think, is the experience. It's basically the work is done before. It looks like it's easy. You walk in, you do it for an hour, go home, but you've actually been working for 20 years.
Absolutely.
To get in that booth.
And like all the best things, like all the best maitre d's, like all the best waiters, like, like it's meant to look effortless.
Yes.
Yes. And that's the joy of it. Smoke and mirrors, Keith. Like,
Smoke and
you may
mirrors.
hear me and think, oh, what is that really expensive Soho studio she's speaking in? Whereas in fact, it's my cupboard.
It's your cupboard. I can see it. It's very colourful.
I like a bit of colour.
Yeah.
Keith, I have no shame.
No, it doesn't matter. It does, because that's the other thing. The other thing I love about doing this job is that people don't know where you are or what you're doing, and so you can be in a room somewhere, anywhere, and end up being in a spaceship or a underground.
Absolutely, and you believe that. I often say to people, it's like when you're young, it's like you're in the playground and you are Luke Skywalker when you're on top of that climbing frame. You absolutely are Luke Skywalker. And yet when the bell goes to go back in, you immediately transform back into yourself. And that's kind of, to me, what animation acting is. It's like, I know that I've got this much time, I've got this much technical stuff to remember, but in this moment, I am a cow.
Yeah.
In one job, Dr. Panda, I felt like I was playing the two ends of the hormonal scale because I was a kind of prepubescent cat and a menopausal cow.
In one show?
In one show, I was scanning all the hormones. Actually, I don't really think there's too much difference between those two stages in life.
One's got more energy than the other.
One's got more energy and the other one's got more weight. Literally, in both ways.
What was the other thing? Sketches. You were talking about sketches.
Oh, yeah. So I think as well, a lot of people that do animation do a lot of sketch shows. So I did what did I do? I did Catherine Tate. I did all the Tracey Ullman. But again, that started off in radio. I did a sketch show on Radio 5, which we wrote for, when Radio 5 was youth and children's, called Colin. And from then, I did Catherine Tate, and from then, I did Tracey Ullman. But I think that that's a similar type of short story that you're telling. And it's a similar type of thing, I think, to animation. It's like how to tell that story of that person really quickly and be funny. The funny bit comes from the belief that you are that person and that you absolutely believe the situation that you're in. You absolutely believe that you're a fairy or a mouse or a, and that's why it's funny. Because you are fully you are fully that character for that moment.
I think you have to keep a bit of your inner child.
And I think that's why, animation acting is so much fun when there's a group of people because everybody's inner child just goes, yeah, yippee, I can play.
And you're given license. You're given license to do that.
Yeah.
And you're a licensed clown, but it's also you've got to be in control. That's the other trick. You can't just go mad. You can't just run around and jump up and down.
Yes.
You have to do it in a controlled way.
Yes, in a control, and that's why I always think I always use that analogy of a child up a climbing frame. They know that they can't actually leap off that climbing frame. They have to go down a few rungs before they leap. But they believe that, and it's the same thing when you're recording an animation. But yeah, the technicality of it.
It is quite a tightrope of technique and what's the word I'm looking for? Just letting yourself go.
Yeah, I like an analogy, Keith. If you hadn't noticed,
do you?
I do. I mean, I think it's kind of like, is it like driving, in that you're driving and you're talking to a person next to you, but you're still concentrating on driving a car? I'm a terrible mic banger.
Oh,
yes.
Right.
So
Okay.
it's kind of don't bang, put your hand. It's like where to move your hands so that you don't knock the microphone. Because when you're playing a child or an animated character, you naturally move your hands around. So it's sort of like you move your hands, but you navigate not going near the microphone. It's that kind of, instinctively you pick these things up over the years, don't you? And I think sometimes as well, when we were doing Horrid Henry, because we were all playing children, and we worked together for absolutely years. I'd say I think it was like 20 years we did that show, and so we became such good friends. And I would literally walk into studio in the morning and think, don't mess around. And I would walk down those stairs and I'd see everybody's faces with their twinkling eyes and just immediately oh, well, that's it. Because like you say, it brings out the child in you all.
Yeah.
And just those, and you know each other so well. You know that you can make jokes that are a bit on the edge, but you know them well enough to know when to stop and when you can, take the mickey out of them. You know all that, but you're right. There is an awful lot of technical knowledge that you need to have as well. Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's awful because sometimes you're laughing so much in the voice booth, and you can see them all in the control room in the studio, just kind of like waiting for you all.
Waiting.
To pull yourself together, and they've got this kind of full smiles on their faces because they don't want to look like killjoys, but they're equally totally bored of your shenanigans. What was the studio, I think, on Marshall Street before we all had mobile phones and we all had we had pagers, and so all the actors would run in and use their phones.
That's right.
It was in what they call NoHo, don't they, in Fitzrovia?
Yeah.
Anyway, it was a big studio with lots of phones, and all the actors would come in because their agents would be paging them, so they'd come in and use their phone.
Yeah.
I mean, it closed down in the end. I slightly wonder whether that we were partly responsible for that.
I would say yes. Yes. Without doubt. You've been listening to I Know That
Shut up, Worm. Move over. I should be doing the credits. That was I Know That Voice, a podcast presented and produced by Keith Wormy Worm Wickham. And the guest in this edition was me, Moody Margaret, also known as Sue Elliott-Nicholls. And I'm the best.